Manipulation and rigging of the LIBOR interest rate benchmark, continuing capitalism in society, putting integrity into finance, or insert your industry here, is purely a positive phenomenon. LIBOR, LIBOR, is the London Interbank offered rate, the interest rate set by submissions of borrowing rates by a dozen banks, plays a major role in determining the interest rate on $750 trillion worth of financial products, including mortgages, credit cards, and student loans, as well as to set the prices of vast amounts of derivatives being traded. The New York Times 2013 reported that in 2012, LIBOR, LIBOR became the center of one of the biggest financial scandals in recent years. As investigators in the United States and Britain focused on possible criminal wrongdoing by a number of the world's biggest banks over the manipulation of LIBOR. Questions have also been raised about the failure of regulators in both countries to stop the practice, despite evidence that both Bank of England and the Federal Reserve of New York were aware of it. The scandal came to light in late 2012 when Barclays, the financial giant, agreed to pay $450 million to settle accusations by American and British authorities that some of its traders attempted to manipulate LIBOR rates to bolster profits. So in this case, I'm not blaming the federal bank and the Bank of England knew about it, so they were enabling it. They weren't the source of the fraud. Um, although making, new employees aware of what is fraud and why fraud is never worth it. Once a month, stating that to new employees until it's ingrained in them. Um, Financial giant agreed to pay for. Authorities also accused Barclays of submitting low rates to deflect concerns about its health during the financial crisis. The scandal prompted the resignations of top bank officials, including Chief Executive Robert E. Diamond Jr. Protests and Scott 2012 report that in Barclays case, regulators and Robert, hopefully you're forgiven and you paid your debts to society or whatever if you did anything, say they uncovered pervasive wrongdoing that spanned a 4-year period and touched and your company to top rungs of the firm, including members of senior management and traders stationed in London, New York, and Tokyo. A 45-page complaint laid bare the scheme that unfolded from 2005 to 2009, describing how Barclays had made false reports with aim of manipulating rates to increase the bank's profits. Barclays was accused of aiding attempts by other banks to manipulate Euribor. The practice of submitting false numbers prompted unease among some employees who worried the bank was being dishonest by definition. If you're an employee and you see fraud, you have freaking whistleblower protection now. So get excited. Um, and look, if you could be responsible for not allowing your company to get shut down, like you'd literally be the hero of the company. The whistleblower is like all a purely positive phenomenon. The practice of submitting false numbers prompted unease among some. Amid speculation that the bank was struggling to raise money, Barclays senior management asked employees to lower the rates submitted to the LIBOR committee or LIBOR, whatever, according to the regulatory filings. Management wanted the bank's rates in line with rivals. Everybody else is doing it. They're going to do it too. Someone else, if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it. Senior Barclays executives instructed employees not to put your head above the paper it. Look up what paper it is. Some employees resisted, but eventually followed orders from top executives. According to regulatory documents, our concerned employee called the rates patently false. On July 1st, 2012, the Telegraph newspaper published an article authored by an employee at a large British bank, not Barclays, entitled LIBOR Scandal: How I Manipulated the Bank Borrowing Rate. The Telegraph's introduction to the article is as follows. An anonymous insider from one of the, well, here you go, whistleblower right here, insider, anonymous, of Britain's biggest bank lenders, aside from Barclays, explains how he and his colleagues helped manipulate the UK's bank borrowing rate. Neither the insider nor the bank can be identified for legal reasons. In the insider's own words, he goes on to explain as follows. It was during a weekly economic briefing at the bank in early 2008 I was first heard the phrase a sterling swaps trader told the assembled economists and managers LIBOR was dislocated with itself. It sounded so nonsensical at first, it just confused everyone and provoked a little laughter. Before long, though, I was drawing up presentations to explain the dislocation of LIBOR from itself. For corporate relationship managers, I was deciphering the subjects in emails internally and externally, and I was using the phrase myself openly with customers of the bank. What I was explaining was that the bank was manipulating LIBOR, only I didn't see it like that at the time. What the trader told us was that the bank could not be seen to be borrowing high rates. So we were putting in low LIBOR submissions, the same as everyone. How could we do that? Easy. The British Bankers Association, which compiled LIBOR, asked for a rate submission, but there were no checks. The trader said there was a general acceptance that you lowered the price a few basis points each year. According to the trader, everyone knew and everyone was doing it. There was no implication of illegality. After all, there were 20 or 30 people even in the room, from management to economists, structuring teams to salespeople, and the more on the teleconference dial in from across the country, and more. The discussion was so open, the behavior seemed above board. In no sense was this clandestine gathering, a clandestine. Looking back, I now feel ashamed by my naive naivete. Had I realized what was going on, I would have blown the whistle. But the openness alone suggested no collusion or secrecy. Management had been in the meeting, and so many areas of the Treasury Division of the bank represented that this was clearly no surprise or secret. As an aside, noted, what if all the other banks were also doing this? Notice in this excellent example how the occurring shaped how the sim situation showed up for this person, how a patently illegal act showed up as something that was perfectly honest and upstanding. And as we have said, when the occurring shifts, behavior shifts to be consistent with it. In December 2012, the Swiss bank UBS paid record total fines of 1.5 billion for its role in a multi-year scheme and manipulate interest rates. Its Japanese subsidiary pled guilty to a charge of felony wire fraud, and the Justice Department filed criminal charges against two former UBS traders. On December 19, 2012, Mark Scott and Ben Protas, 2012, writing for a Deal Book, reported the following. I would also love to see a study of the amount of convictions and jail time, not jail time, but number of people that serve even a month in jail compared to other countries. It seems astronomical. Like the US is catching all these worldwide criminals left and right. It's crazy. The cash penalties represented, I'm not saying like the US is perfect or anything like that. I'm just seems very interesting that the Justice Department is involved in so many of these international banking issues. The cash penalties represented the largest fines to date related to the rate rigging inquiry. The fine is also one of the biggest sanctions in the that American and British authorities have ever levied against a financial institution, falling just short of 1.9 billion payout by that HSBC made last week over money laundering accusations. The severity of the UBS penalties last week, this was written in 2000, what, 11? What does it say? 2012. The severity of the UBS penalties, authorities said, reflected the extent of the problems the government complaints laid bare a scheme that spanned from at least 2001 to 2010, describing how banks reported false rates to squeeze out extra profits and deflect concerns about its health during the financial crisis. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the American regulator leading the case, cited 2,000 instances of illegal acts involving dozens of UBS employees. Knock wood, we are headed for the golden age. But if there is a financial crisis, if that happens, let's be all straight with each other about what's happening when you see it, so that people can make informed choices and decisions. And I don't know. I mean, there's a reason why companies and people can hold wealth for generations and centuries, and other companies lose it after they've been in business for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 50 years, whatever like that. But then you got your 100+ year old companies, few and far between, but there's a reason why they are able to remain successful and highly rated for so long. Um, yeah, notice today, do not make for pretty reading. Tracy McDermott, Enforcement Director for the Financial Services Authority of Britain, said in a statement the integrity of the benchmarks, she said, are fundamental importance to both UK and international financial markets. UBS traders and managers ignored this. Findings were set out in the notice today. The UBS case reflects a pattern of abuse that authorities have uncovered as part of a multi-year investigation into rate rigging. The inquiry, which has ensnared more than a dozen big banks, is focused on key trademarks like the London Interbank Offered Rate, or LIBOR. The New York Times 2013 reports Canadian, Swiss, and Asian authorities, as well as Justice Department. All right, great. We're working internationally here. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission and Britain's Financial Services Authority are investigating more than a dozen banks, along with UBS, and the Futures Commission was focused on potential wrongdoing at two American banks, Citigroup and JP Morgan Chase. Officials said HSBC was no longer under scrutiny. Okay, all right. So American banks are being held accountable too. It's not like a one-sided thing, clearly. As the Justice Department announced in its case against UBS, prosecutors also took aim at two former UBS traders at the center of rate rigging scheme. The Justice Department charged Tom Hayes and Roger Darren with conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Knock wood, you guys are both forgiven and paid your debts. Mr. Hayes also faces an additional count of wire fraud and other related to price fixing by causing UBS and financial institutions to spread false or misleading information. Attorney General Eric Holder said in a statement these alleged conspirators and others at UBS manipulated the benchmark interest rate upon which many consumer financial products, including credit cards, student loans, and mortgages, are frequently based. JR 2013, writing for December 2019, 2012, Economist column Schumpter Business and Management summarizes of what was unfolding in the manipulation of LIBOR and Euribor seems like the same as LIBOR, but for Europe. Interest rates in his column entitled Horribly Rotten, Comically Stupid as follows. For any who doubted whether there was honor among thieves or indeed among investment bankers, solace may be found in the details of the settlement between UBS, a Swiss bank, and regulators around the world over a vast and troubling conspiracy by some of its employees to rig LIBOR and Euribor key market interest rates. Regulators in Britain and Switzerland have argued that manipulation of interest rates that took place over a long period of time involved many employees at UBS, and that, according to Britain's Financial Service Authority, was so routine and widespread that every LIBOR and Euribor submission in currencies and tenors in which UBS traded during the relevant period was at risk of having been improperly influenced to benefit derivatives trading position. Yet, even in the midst of this wrongdoing, there was evidence of a sense of honor, however misplaced. One banker at UBS, in asking a broker to help manipulate submissions, promised ample recompense. Does that mean like we'll compensate you if you manipulate the numbers? I will effing do one homogenous deal with you, like a 50,000 buck deal, whatever I need you to keep it as low as possible. If you do that, I'll pay you, $50,000, $100,000, whatever you want. I'm a man of my word. Wow. Further hints emerge of the warped morality that was held by some UBS employees and their conspirators at brokers and rival banks. In one telling conversation, an unnamed broker asks an employee at another bank to submit a false bid at the request of a UBS trader, lest the good turn go unnoticed. The broker reassures the banker that he will pass on the word of the manipulation to UBS. Broker B, yeah, he will know me. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Panel bank, number one submitter, scratch my back. Yeah, at all. Broker B, yeah, oh, definitely. Yeah, play the rules. What the frick? Hayes was convicted of manipulating LIBOR. See below for the UK trial. Steelbook 2012. Okay, New York Times, I guess, is Steelbook. Regulators found that brokers at these firms helped coordinate false submissions between banks, posted false rates and estimates of rates might go on in their trading screens, and even posted spoof bids to mislead market participants as to the real rate in the market. Whoa! In addition, in early 2013, the Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS, was fined 612 million. This is like all these banks that I like always thought were on the up and up. Like so they're being held accountable. So by regulators for manipulating the LIBOR rate. And in 2012, the attorneys general of New York and Connecticut issued subpoenas to Citigroup, Deutsche Bank, JP Morgan Chase, and HSBC. It is yet to be seen what comes up from those investigations. This paper was written in 2013, so I'm assured something has come of those investigations. Interestingly, there are indications that manipulation of the LIBOR was going on as early as 1991, and attempts to call attention that manipulation were ignored by authorities. See Douglas 2012. In its September 21st, 2015 issue, Bloomberg Businessweek published a detailed history of the manipulation of LIBOR, focusing on the story of one man, Tom Hayes, discussed above. See Vaughn and Finch 2015 for the history and facts of the situation, and Vaughn and Finch's 2016 books on the topic. On May 26, 2015, Hayes went to trial in London, charged with 18 counts of rigging LIBOR, and 19 days later was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 14 years in prison for his crimes and manipulating LIBOR. Others were scheduled to be tried as well. The following blurb for the book reveals much of that is consistent with our concerns about putting integrity into finance. The first thing you think is, where's the edge? Where can I get a bit more money? How can I push the boundaries? But the point is, you are greedy. You want every little bit of money that you can possibly get because, like I say, that is how you are judged. That is your performance metric. Tom Hayes, 2013. In the midst of the financial crisis, Tom Hayes and his network of traders and brokers from Wall Street's leading firms set to work engineering the biggest financial conspiracy ever seen. As the rest of the world burned, they came together on secret chat rooms and late night phone calls to hatch an audacious plan to ring LIBOR, the world's most important number, and the basis for 350 million in securities from mortgage to loans to derivatives. Without the persistence of a ragtag team of investigators from the US, they would have got away with it. If it wasn't for you meddling kids, the fixed by Bloomberg journalists Liam Vaughn and Gavin Finch is the inside story of the LIBOR scandal, told through the journey of the man at the center of it, a young, scruffy, socially awkward misfit from England whose genius for math and obsessive personality made a trading phenomenon, but ultimately paved the way for his own downfall. The Fix provides a rare look into the dark heart of the global finance at the start of the 21st century. Wow, that's crazy. All right, so Finch, Furtado, Brush, 2013, Forbes, 2012, Bray, 2015, P3, Vaughn and Finch, 2016. Goodreads has a link to the book. You on November 5, 2015, two British traders employed by a Dutch bank, Rabobank, were between them. Found between on all 28 charges of rigging the LIBOR rate by New York jury, 19 counts for one and 9 counts for the other defendant. At trial, three of the four of Rabobank traders who all pled guilty to participating in the scheme testified against British traders the two British traders. As New York Times summarized, more than half a dozen banks, including Rabobank, have paid more than 10 billion to settle charges with regulators and law enforcement agencies that they conspired to rig LIBOR along with some of the world's largest banks. Rabo itself admitted to manipulating the rate and agreed to 2013 to pay 1 billion in penalties to US, Dutch, and British regulators of $325 million, of which was levied by the US Justice Department. Um, I reckon that the US crime rate, including white collar crimes, is overall down because of stuff like this. You get busted, it gets all over global news, and knock wood, that's the example, and nobody else is gonna try this crazy stuff again. Because I know crime overall across the US is down, so I'd imagine that's almost identical and equal to the white collar crime as well. Um, and then non-white collar crime, whatever that would be called. Wells Fargo and company fined 185 million in a settlement for outrageous sales culture, calling it outrageous and a major breach of trust. And look, crime might ebb and flow and go up and down, but overall, like you compare like 1920s to today, or like 1800s crime rates to today, or 1700s or 1600s, whatever it is. I'd like to see that study too. calling it outrageous and a major breach of trust. All right, we'll continue back on Wells Fargo. Hope you're on the best day ever. Peace, love. Bye bye.